Welcome to this week's Petra Legacy Bible Study, the last episode of 2024. It's truly been a privilege and an honor to serve you in this capacity, and I look forward to doing so in 2025. Today, we'll explore balancing duty, faith, and love through scripture and story. This theme is reflected in my book, Petra, An Unbroken Legacy, where the male protagonist, Dr. Kasim Ma'an, bears the weight of his family's destiny, wrestling with these conflicting demands. Have you ever felt torn between the weight of responsibility, your faith, and the desires of your heart? Dr. Kasim's journey mirrors this struggle and points us to the biblical truths that help us navigate such challenges in our life. Here's an excerpt from my book, Kasim, Confronting Father. After the meal, I pulled my father aside and demanded an audience with him in his office. I was livid. I was appalled. I was done with it all. I'm no longer going to allow this family to ruin my life or the people I love. Nothing about their actions tonight resembled Christ-like behavior. I wasn't willing to pretend to defend a legacy that claims to cling to Christian values and faith, but lives the opposite of them. I've done everything that's been required of me since I was a child. Now I'm a man. I'm capable of thinking for myself. I'm not here to fight for position, power, or wealth. Jesus came against the Pharisees and the Sadducees of his day for seeking such things and for oppressing God's people. What was my family legacy coming to? I rehearsed this diatribe in my mind over and over again while I waited for my father in his study. Kasim, my father interrupted me mid-thought. Father, I nodded my head curtly. What is on your mind, son? Since you raised the question, I will respond honestly. Let me first ask you a question. What are we all doing here? What is our true mission? I can't continue to be a part of something that doesn't glorify God. And this family's attack on Isa brings no glory to him. It was shameful and doesn't display Christ at all. Son, calm down, please. I will not marry Tirsa. Kasim, going against my wishes brings dishonor. I would rather give up my wealth, power, and prestige before dishonoring you, Father. My son, to give up your inheritance and thus your legacy would bring the worst kind of dishonor. What is really troubling you? Father, were you not sitting at the same table this evening? Kasim has been plotting and manipulating us to gain wealth, power, and position. He seems to have bewitched poor Tirsa into doing his bidding. Mother would be appalled at his actions. Son, you think I'm so old that I'm dull of mind? I believe Tirsa is the best choice for you, and I think your mother would approve. Father, that's not fair. If only my dear wife were here. She could temper her brother. We must somehow get Tirsa out from under his spell. You just don't get it. I don't want to marry Tirsa. I don't love her. I was the obedient son when I married Abby. I will not have my life ruined again by the choices of others. How dare you speak ill of your dead wife? She gave us one of our greatest gifts, and don't forget that. That's not what I meant. Miri means the world to me, and I grew to love Abby. I grieved her and had to try to raise a daughter at such a young age. The difference is I'm no longer 17. I'm 42. I'm a grown man and capable of making my own decisions, especially concerning what's best for me. Oh, Kasim, where did I go wrong raising you? All I ever wanted was the best for you, to leave a continuous legacy for you and your descendants. I sighed in exasperation. Father, I know you only want the best for me, but you must hear me. Isa is what's best for me. Have you prayed and asked the Lord about Tirsa? Father dropped his head. I didn't want to bring sorrow to him in his old age, but I had to continue. Well, I've prayed and sought the Lord on this matter. Not only do I love Isa, I feel a sense of renewed purpose with her by my side. I feel at peace and I'm happy. She loves the Lord and is committed to helping us because she's obeying what God told her to do. Son, I'm forever in her debt for obeying the Lord for my healing. And I've given it much thought. I performed a background check on her. Father, sorry, son, but it was necessary, and you know it. Okay, now that's called family dynamics. So let's turn back to the discussion for today. Balancing duty, faith, and love. Have you ever felt caught between the demands of responsibility, your faith in God, and the desires of your heart? Well, you're not alone. Today, we'll dive into the life of Dr. Kasim, the male protagonist in Petra, an Unbroken Legacy, and uncover biblical truths to help us find balance in these areas. So let's explore 3 key points: the weight of responsibility, wrestling with faith, and the power of love. Number 1, the weight of responsibility. Luke 12:48 tells us, "To whom much is given, much is required." This verse emphasizes the burden and privilege of responsibility. For example, Moses, tasked with leading the Israelites out of Egypt, often felt the weight of his duty, but relied on God's guidance. In the story I just read, Kasim shoulders the burden of fulfilling his family's legacy, a task that feels inescapable. His sense of duty drives him to make sacrifices, but it also blinds him to the personal connections and faith he desperately needs. When he finally stands up for himself, guilt gnaws at him. Many of us juggle responsibilities like parenting, careers, or serving in ministry. And these are honorable pursuits, but they can become overwhelming without balance. For example, a person taking on extra work to provide for their family, but feeling disconnected from loved ones. We must recognize that our responsibilities are opportunities to serve God and others. They should never eclipse our dependence on God or the relationships He's placed in our lives. If you find yourself in this predicament, here's an action step you can take. Stop and reflect on your current responsibilities. Are you carrying them alone? Or are you inviting God to help you bear the load? And are you communicating your struggles, needs, and desires with your loved ones and listening to theirs in return? Number 2, wrestling with faith. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 tells us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. For example, Abraham demonstrated faith when called to sacrifice his son Isaac in Genesis 22. He didn't understand God's plan, but obeyed, and God provided. Kasim struggles to reconcile his duty with his faith. He questions God's purpose for his life and whether his sacrifices will be worth it. A pivotal moment occurs when Kasim faces a decision that requires him to trust in God and God alone over his own understanding. We need to understand that wrestling with our faith is natural, especially when life feels uncertain. For example, a person facing a difficult decision like changing careers or moving to an unfamiliar place we may struggle to see God's bigger plan in it all. In moments like this, we must bring to remembrance times when we've wrestled with doubt, but later saw God's faithfulness. Faith doesn't mean having all the answers. It means trusting God when the path is unclear. If you find yourself in this predicament, here's an action step you can take. Identify one area where you struggle to trust God. Pray for clarity and courage to submit to God's will. Number 3, the power of love. 1 Peter 4:8 tells us, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. For example, the book of Ruth highlights sacrificial love. Ruth's commitment to Naomi and Boaz's kindness demonstrates how love can transfer lives. And despite Kasim's faith, his issues with faith and legacy, it became a distraction instead of a source of strength. His relationships with those who challenged him and supported him, let them become a reflection of God's love and grace instead. Open communication with your loved ones. It is essential to bringing understanding and mutual beneficial resolution. Sometimes we hurt those we love in the name of love, or for what we think is best in the moment, even though we're pushing away those we love in the process. For example, Kasim's father pushes his son away, believing that his actions are righteous or correct without considering his son's own feelings. Also, consider how love is often overlooked in seasons of busyness or hardship, but it is essential for spiritual and emotional health. For example, a parent dedicating time to connect with their children despite a demanding schedule, finding that these moments actually restore and inspire them to continue their work, but with renewed hope and purpose. Remember that love is not manipulative and it's not a means to an end. It's a reflection of God's nature and a reminder of what truly matters. If you find yourself in this predicament, here's an action step you can take. Identify one person in your life you can show God's love to this week, whether through words, through time, or acts of kindness. So let's recap these 3 points. 1, the weight of responsibility is manageable when we rely on God. 2, wrestling with faith strengthens our trust and dependence on Him. 3, love is the glue that holds our faith and duties together. Let me leave you with this challenge. This week, reflect on your responsibilities. Trust God with your struggles and love others deeply. Stay tuned next week We'll continue discussing some life-altering themes from my book, Petra and Unbroken Legacy, and see what the Bible has to say about navigating these life challenges. Allow me to use storytelling to help you pivot towards God's purposes. Together, let's strengthen our faith, deepen our love for Scripture, and build a spiritual legacy of faith and knowledge in Jesus Christ that will impact generations to come. And if you haven't already had a chance to get a copy of Petra and Unbroken Legacy, please do so at your earliest convenience. It can be found on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, and at most online book retail stores. See you next week, and Happy New Year. God bless you all.